In order to talk about sickle cell disease, we need to know what hemoglobin is. It's a protein, and the abbreviation is capital H, lowercase b. And remember, protein means it's made up of polypeptide chains, which are subunits of the protein. And each polypeptide chain is made of a string of amino acids. So this protein has 4 polypeptide chains, or 4 subunits. They're called globins, and they assemble into an actual functional hemoglobin. So each globin itself doesn't do anything, but when all 4 are together, plus they have heme groups, as you see here, then it can carry oxygen, as we'll see. So we're showing 2 of the subunits in blue and 2 subunits in green. The 2 forms of globin, the different subunits, are encoded by genes. Remember, genes code for proteins and functional RNA products. These are proteins. HbA1 is a gene, and HbA2 is a gene. So those HbA genes code for alpha hemoglobin. That's shown here in the blue-purple color. HbB is the gene that codes for this beta globin subunit. If we look at how the whole structure of hemoglobin works, we have a globin subunit. It binds a heme group. As you can see, they're represented by these flat planes here. And they're actually molecules, but they are flat in structure. There's 4 heme groups, 1 per subunit. Each heme group binds an iron ion. So you can see Fe2+, that's the iron ion that's in the heme group. Each iron ion binds an oxygen molecule, O2 is how we abbreviate oxygen, and it holds it there. So overall, the structure of the subunit have the heme group with the iron, and the iron helps it bind the oxygen. So in the end, this is going to increase oxygen transport and efficiency of transport around the body. If we look at red blood cells, which I'll abbreviate RBC, they're also called erythrocytes. Erythro is referring to the red, cyte means cell. They're made in the bone marrow. They travel through the bloodstream in order to distribute the oxygen and pick up the carbon dioxide around the body. Structurally, they contain up to 250 million hemoglobin molecules. So each red blood cell, that's a lot. The actual red blood cells don't have nuclei at maturity, so they don't have DNA. They're really just carriers of these hemoglobin molecules, and then on top of that, the oxygen. They are biconcave shape, which means on the right picture, you can see here how it looks like it's a depression in the middle, a little push down. If you look on the other side, it's going to be pushed down on the other side too, hence bi meaning 2, concave meaning caved in. So both sides are caved in. And this allows the cells to be flexible. It allows them to bend, which means they can get through really small blood vessels called capillaries. It also gives them lots of surface area, red blood cells, to diffuse gases in and out. So overall, the structure of a red blood cell facilitates the function of gas exchange. We're not going to do a whole lot of anatomy physiology because this is just an intro bio course, not an A&P course. But there are a few structures you'd need to understand for gas exchange, which is what's going on with this hemoglobin and what's part of the problem with sickle cell disease. So in the respiratory system, part of that is the lungs. They branch and end in these sacs called alveoli. That's the plural of the word. And each alveolus has all these little tiny blood vessels surrounding it, and they're called capillaries, the very smallest blood vessels. And this is where the gas exchange is going to happen between the air and the lungs. And then once we get to the organs, each organ is surrounded by capillaries as well. And the gas exchange happens between the organs and the blood vessels at the capillaries around each organ. It's carbon dioxide and oxygen are being exchanged. So when we look at red blood cells and blood coming from the body to the lungs, they have high carbon dioxide and low oxygen. They've picked up CO2 waste from each body organ, and they've given their oxygen away. So at those capillaries in the alveoli, we have CO2 going out of the bloodstream to be breathed out, and we have oxygen coming into the bloodstream when you breathe in. Then going from the lungs to the body, now it has high oxygen and low carbon dioxide, which is great because we want to bring oxygen to the organs and we want to have low CO2 so we can have room to take the CO2 away. And it just, cycles like this. If we look at the effects of sickle cell disease on this process, we'll notice that structure influences function. So these are the changes that lead to sickle cell disease. First, you have a change in the HBB DNA sequence. That sequence, being different, changes the beta globin subunit shape. Then the subunit shape changes the hemoglobin molecule overall, which is the protein. Those proteins now stick together because of their different shapes. On the cellular level, in low oxygen, these red blood cells collapse. So the cell is the red blood cell, and you can see they're normally round, but when they have mutant hemoglobin in them, the sticking together part, they're going to collapse and become sickle shape. A sickle is a tool you can use to harvest like wheat and things like that. You cut it with it. That's why it's called sickle cell, because it looks like a sickle. So then we get to the tissues and organs, which is one level up. Tissues are made of a bunch of cells. Organs are made of a bunch of tissues. The red blood cells get stuck in these tiny capillaries because they're the wrong shape. They're not so flexible now. And it restricts the blood flow to the organs. So we have problems dropping off oxygen. And on the organismal level, we don't have enough oxygen delivery, which leads to anemia. A lot of pain from those stuck red blood cells in the capillaries. You'll have shortness of breath because of inefficient respiration. You can't exchange the gases, and that's what breathing is, gas exchange. Spleen damage, because that's what filters the red blood cells, and when they're sickle-shaped, they get stuck in the spleen and can damage that. Might have to have your spleen taken out. And then you actually have decreased immune function, which increases your infection risk, and that's due to the anemia problem. So you can see how the messed up structure of those red blood cells influences their function. They can't function very well anymore. So that's the basic overview of hemoglobin and red blood cells carrying oxygen via hemoglobin, and then how when you change that hemoglobin protein, because you change the gene, you get a change in the organism overall.